Hello, my name is Father Columba Jordan. I'm a Franciscan Friar of the Renewal. And today I wanted to talk to you about relationships. So relationships are pretty important, right? And I'm particularly talking about, say, your family relationships, your friendships, those kinds of relationships, and learning how to grow in them. We all need human connection, right? We need to be loved and to love. Without that, we're going to be in trouble. But even in marriage, I know people who are lonely. You can be living with people, lots of people. You can be in the middle of a party and you can be lonely. And often the reason for this is because we maybe struggle to connect, or sometimes it's even just we don't have some skills that would help us connect better with other people. And connection is a two-way thing, right? It's not just me trying to connect to you somehow or other, but it would require also you connecting to me. So that's why, for example, doing a video like this, you are getting to know stuff that I'm telling you, but I don't know anything about you. It's only a one-way, whereas what we really need as humans is a two-way connection, which sometimes is called intimacy. You might have heard the little way that that's sometimes broken up, that word, intimacy, is into me, you see, which is a great explanation of what intimacy really is. That we need to have people who actually see into us. Now that requires me letting you see into me, because otherwise there's no way for you to know. None of us are mind readers. We can't know what's going on in another person's heart unless they share it. So this connection, this two-way connection, it requires you communicating yourself to me and me communicating myself to you, this two-way thing. And this is how we meet a very basic need. If we don't have this need met, problems can arise. You can see this like in families. If one or both of the parents aren't having this basic need met in a healthy way through their spouse and through their other adult friends, then it can just breed an unhealthy environment where they could maybe even start using their kids to meet these needs. Now, it's good that there be good connection between parents and kids, but the primary place where the parents' needs are met should not be from the kids, apparently. I don't know. I don't have kids or a family, so I'm just saying what I've learned and what I've read in books. But once those needs are being met in a good, healthy way, then the parents are freed to what? They're free to focus on meeting their children's needs, not their own needs from their children. So it just kind of keeps things good and healthy. So how do we work on this? What does this involve? And what I want to give you is just some basic tools, relationship tools, very, very simple. Actually, mostly just focused on conversations, how we have them. And to be honest, to be really honest, I'm not great at conversation. Sometimes I find myself in a conversation with somebody, I'm kind of going, all right, how do you do this again? So I talk to them, and what do I share? What do I say? Do we just talk about some random topic? Do we talk about them? Because they seem to be talking a lot. I don't know. Do I get to say something? I might be feeling frustrated in a conversation, and sometimes I don't know what to do. So I've tried to learn a couple of things, and I just wanted to share them with you. for real deep connection between people, vulnerability is the essential component. A lot of people don't. Why would we not like being vulnerable? Well, it's risky. It's vulnerable. Vulnerability is way too vulnerable. Brilliant insight, Father Columba. How did you think of that one? Well, it actually means, I'm open to be wounded. I think vulnera is the Latin for a wound. It's like, that sounds horrible. I don't want to be wounded. So when we enter into relationship, this vulnerability it's a non-negotiable if you actually want connection. You can fake it and pretend. You can, pretend to be vulnerable, but it actually won't meet your needs. So you're not fooling anybody, apparently. So learning to be vulnerable. So part of then my journey of getting to know myself better and communicate myself better and develop my relationships and friendships has been then trying to work on conversations. Like, how do I get better at this? So a few things. One, I would say, when in conversation with somebody, and I'm talking here about somebody who's a friend, someone you want to grow in connection with. Firstly, what I try to do is I try to focus on them. I try to go into it focusing on them. I also, part of that is asking questions. Might seem really obvious, but it's not. And number 3 is share, be vulnerable. Very, very simple. Okay, so let's dig into those a little bit. A number of years ago, I had a friend, still have the same friend, I have a number of friends. And I was talking to my spiritual director about the friendship and just how to kind of be better at the friendship. And we talk sometimes on the phone and just have like really great conversations and great sense of connection. And then other times we kind of wouldn't. I'm like, what's up with that? I'm trying to figure that out. And I spoke to my spiritual director about it, and he said, when you're in these conversations, whether or not you have a great conversation is actually out of your control. And if you try to control it, if you try to go into that conversation thinking, right, I really hope this is an amazing conversation, then what you're doing is you're trying to put your needs in front of your friend's needs, which is kind of a form of like self-love rather than making the focus a form of love of the other person. He said, if you will look after and make your goal, I really want to care for my friend, and I want to put their needs first in this conversation, and then leave your needs up to God to look after, then you might be surprised that He will look after you very, very nicely. So I gave it a go. I started, as I was kind of coming up to the phone call, the conversation, whatever it was, I'd be like, okay, I really want to focus on them. I want to focus on, right, how can I really make them feel loved and special? How can I work on connecting in a more meaningful way for their sake? And it was amazing. I was really very, very different. It's like, wow. Firstly, it kind of felt cleaner. I felt like, you know what? I think there was a lot of selfishness in the way I connected with this person and with lots of my friends. A lot of selfishness, and it was just, I've got needs and I want my needs met. I want to, I felt good about the last conversation. I want to feel good about this conversation. Me. Whereas this way was like, do you know what? I'm just going to let that go. And if all I'm doing in this conversation is just giving, that is okay. And sometimes that happens, right? Sometimes your friend is really in need, they're really struggling, and they just need to talk, and they just need someone to listen. So in that situation, I'm not going to get my needs met, but that's okay, because there's going to be another time when I'm really in a bad place, I'm really desperate, and I need them to be able to listen to me. And that's the give and take of a friendship. But on the whole, when I was talking with my friend, it was amazingly different. It felt cleaner. It felt much more kind of mutual. Yeah, so that was a huge thing, and I really want to encourage you with that. And the primary thing in there is, as I said, is ask questions. I was recently with my friends, it's this little family, 3 kids, 2 parents, and was talking, and one of the kids was talking, and I was enjoying hearing what they were saying. And at a certain point, they'd kind of gone on from a couple of topics, one topic to another. They were monologuing, and at a certain point, their mum said, "How about asking some questions?" She said it very gently. But it was interesting, the daughter heard her, young daughter, and went, "Oh." And then this little daughter started asking me questions, me, the 46-year-old man, I'm like, this is whatever, 9-year-old or something. She's like, so tell me about music. What do you like about music? Like, this is amazing. And it was amazing because I felt like, wow. I felt kind of, seen. Like, oh yeah, wow, I'm important here too. And the parents were like, that was I thought some great parenting. Just, it's a great skill, because we can kind of forget that, right? What is it like to be curious about other people? What's going on in them, right? What are they actually dealing with? Am I seeing the real them, or are they just putting on a front? What would it be like to see the real them, if they were really being open and vulnerable? You know what it's like when somebody really lets down their guard and kind of lets you in? Now sometimes if they haven't done that very often, it can be a lot, it can be overwhelming, but often it's such a delight to kind of you feel sort of trusted, you feel honored and loved. I certainly do. And that's how they feel when you do it too. It's not burdening somebody, it's actually giving them, in some ways, maybe the only and the most precious gift you have to give, which is yourself. What's really going on? And it's not about the things you do. I could do things for you. It's like, no, the most precious gift you have is not what you can do, it's not your skills, it's you. But if we don't do this, or if we don't let them give that gift and we're not there to receive it, then this can't happen. So ask questions, stir up curiosity. And sometimes that's a lot of work. Like, people can be kind of closed and they try to give just one word answers. They don't really want to say anything, but people want to be known. People want to know they can actually, that they're wanted, they're valued in this situation. Like, we feel loved when people ask us questions, when someone seems fascinated in us. It's like, wow. I have some friends who they're so good at this. I have a whole conversation with them, and the two of them are just like asking me all of these questions, and great questions. I'm like, I can't think of half the good questions that these ask. I'm like, oh, and then I really have to work to kind of get in and ask them a question about them. No, oh yeah, but enough about me. Tell me what's going on about you. And I feel so honored and so loved, and that we can give this love and honor to other people just by asking them questions and by having a little bit of curiosity about people. Sometimes if we do this, well, okay, maybe I should say it. Sometimes I'm afraid that if I do this, if I ask questions and the other person is a monologuer, they're somebody who just, oh, well, let me tell you about myself. And they just start talking and they don't stop. They get back into the same problem of the monologue. Sometimes in connections, in friendships, if that becomes a repeated issue, I might say something to them. Or I might just, after a while, we're coming to the end of our conversation time, I might just interrupt and say, hey, it's been so good to hear what's going on in your life. Could I share a bit? Any chance? Yeah. So that's one way you could just interrupt a little bit, because sometimes people, they're just not as aware. Lots of times I've been that person, just not aware. Another temptation, this is one that I definitely can identify with this, because I do this all the time, is if, let's say, someone shares something, they say, oh, I love this thing. And I go, oh my gosh, I love that thing too. So I've got something that's kind of similar to that, or oh, that's like this thing in my life. And then I start talking about the thing that's kind of similar. Do you see what's actually just happened there is I just took the focus off you and I put it onto me. Now, once off, that's okay, but if that becomes a habit, then it turns into this whole thing of like, I'm trying to share something and you keep taking the focus onto you, so it's all about you. It's not about the other person, which was that whole thing that I learned initially. It's like, when I go into a conversation, I really want to try and, my job is to make the other person feel loved. Now their job, whether they know it or not, is to make me feel loved. Now that's between them and God. I have no control over that and no judgments. But if we try to keep that in mind, so I might now if I catch myself and I say, oh yeah, that's like something in my life. What I might do is I might just say like, I so identify with that, but keep going, tell me more. I try to put the attention back onto them. So then there's this expression of real connection, but focus it on them. Now, if they want to put the focus back on me, that's a beautiful gift. And I receive that gift. I go, oh, thank you so much. And then I get to share, and if they take the focus back or whatever, that's on them. But we just try and keep the balance of the conversation. And a great way to do that isn't that I'm controlling the balance. Is my job is I've only one part of the job, which is put them at the center of it. And their job is to put me at the center. And it's almost like a good marriage. If marriage worked that way, it'd be great. One person, your goal is to make them happy, and their goal is to make you happy, and that's all we can hope for. Another great tool, as the conversation's going, to keep the focus on them, ask clarifying questions. Like this whole thing, stir up curiosity. Like, wow, tell me more. That's a great open question, right? If you say to somebody, tell me more, they can't answer with a yes, can they? Well, I guess they can say, yes, I will tell you more. Or they could say, no, I won't tell you more. But in terms of talking about the topic, like, tell me more. Okay, and then this other thing happened. And that can be a thing. Use questions that are open-ended rather than something that's can be answered with a yes or a no or a one answer question. What was that experience like? Wow. Whereas if I say like, oh my gosh, you must have felt really afraid. Well, maybe they could take that and run with it. But if you ask a question that's just like yes or no, then boom, that brings a stop to their flow. Whereas if you ask a question that opens it up, like, what was that like? Can you describe that, right? That means they have to say more stuff, which is great because it means I'm expressing to them, I want to hear more. I want to hear more of your heart. I'm curious to know your heart, which is a huge way of honoring and loving somebody. Now, sometimes this work of kind of teasing more out of people, keeping the focus on them can be really hard. Some people are just quite shut in on themselves. So we have to work on it. And it can sometimes be exhausting if you're trying to come up with things to talk about with somebody and they keep answering in like one sentence. It's exhausting, but it's really a work of love. And it's also a gift, it's a training. And to learn, okay, how can I get good at this? I do some work with young people and that can be a job. Like, wow, teenagers, what do I talk about with them? And getting some places, some topics that I may not know a lot about, but that might be of interest to them. That really can be a challenge, but it's a challenge that's really worthwhile because again, this conversation is the place of encounter where we can more than maybe any other express to somebody that we're interested in, that we care, that they can feel that they're loved. And then we have the all-important sharing. If you get the opportunity to share, if you can get the other person to shut their mouth for a minute, if they happen to get curious about you, you get to share. And there's a difference between sharing facts and sharing your heart. When you share a fact, it's like, oh yeah, I went to work today and it was this happened and that happened. Okay, they're all facts. But if you share something about how you felt, that is very, very different. It's very different. It's much more vulnerable. Especially sharing some emotion. So if you say, for example, something terrible happened and you were really, really angry. I mean, it's a little bit safer to express anger, right? It's like, oh my God, I was so angry with that person. Okay, and that could turn into a bit of a gossip session. So we might want to avoid that one. But something like, what you really enjoyed, what you were afraid of, whatever. Like, is there ways in which, as you're sharing what's happening in your life, you can actually share not just the facts, but actually something of your heart? You can actually let somebody into your inner world. This is where the risk comes in. This is where vulnerability. Now, we're not going to do this with everyone. right? This is maybe just something for friends, but to grow in our capacity to do this, to grow in our capacity to really seek after real connection with people. So there's a couple of the tools I found really useful. I am not an expert at using these at all. I really struggle with being a good other person focused conversationalist, a loving conversationalist, but I really want to grow in it. And I hope those tools of focusing on the other person, asking questions, and trying to share in a vulnerable, appropriately vulnerable way, hopefully they might be of some help to you as you go on your journey. Thank you. God bless.